After years of unanswered questions, a break in the unsolved Gilgo Beach murders out of Long Island.
Hey, no!
I'm done.
No!
I'm done.
No!
You're all right. You're all right. You're all right.
You dead man! Ah!
A little bit earlier, the Hampton County District Attorney just released new evidence in the abduction and murder of Holly Paranen of Sturbridge.
A fourth serial killer more than 30 years after the last victim was found.
The New Bedford highway murders terrorized the South Coast back in the 80s. And as chief investigator, Cheryl Fiannato reports one victim's family believes the case is one tip away from being solved.
There are new developments in a case that terrorized the central U.S. for decades. Investigators believe the BTK killer may have had more victims than we first knew. Emily Akena now on what they found in his backyard this week.
Hey! You want to get... Hey! Hey! 43! 43! Hey! Put your hands up! Put your hands up! Get on the ground! Hey, got one in the back! One in the back! I swear to God! That's it! You move your whole other ass! Black pants coming down the hill! Got two on foot! That's the problem. Y'all want coming down the ramp. I'm gonna tell you, shit off you, boy. Coming down the ramp, gray sweatshirt, black pants, mask on. Guy just jumped down. Yeah, he just jumped down.
What have you been arrested for? You ever been arrested before?
Danny, where's your car?
Never been arrested before in L.A.?
My foot was down.
When? How long ago? Sit up. How long ago? What's your name? What's your name?
11.
Developing this morning, new insight into capturing a suspected serial killer. The California man is believed to be behind a string of brutal murders that started back in July. Well, police say he was caught yesterday while he was hunting for another victim. Here's CBS's Bradley Blackburn.
Stockton, California police say this is the suspected serial killer who has had an entire city frozen in fear. Wesley Brownlee was arrested just after 2 a.m. Saturday near his Stockton home.
Tonight in Moscow, Idaho, Brian Koberger, the man charged with stabbing 4 college students to death, now indicted by a grand jury.
It would have made a frightening Hitchcock thriller if the crimes hadn't been real. A killer was stalking Boston women, raping and strangling them. In the most grotesque manner, he would display his work, and he always left a bizarre calling card, a nylon tied in a granny knot around the neck of each victim.
Good evening. Welcome to 22 News at 11. An intriguing development tonight concerning the search for the killer of Molly Bish.
Understandably, security is extremely tight here at the Pensacola City Jail. On the second floor of this building, Ted Bundy is under constant guard. Authorities are very well aware of the fact that Bundy has twice escaped from jail, and now that they know who he is, they are not about to let him slip away again. When he was arrested shortly after midnight on Wednesday, he was just considered a belligerent speeder. He fought with arresting officer David Lee when Lee stopped him for speeding. Only late last night, following FBI fingerprint identification, did Pensacola police learn they had captured one of the most wanted and according to the FBI, most dangerous criminals in the country.
On the evening of February 9th, 2004, almost 18 years ago, Maura Murray crashed her car on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, never to be seen again.
I can't. Negative. I can't say. All I can say is this man needed help. This man seemed like a man who was coming up to a storm or to a climax. This very blood-curdling thing at one of the cutoffs where he said, children kill, and then sort of an agonized cutoff, enough to turn your hair whiter than mine.
So inside the thrift shop, St. Vincent de Paul, attorney Melvin Belli and the San Francisco police waited for the Zodiac killer.
What's up, Devin?
We're going to have a great time together.
It may be the creepiest episode ever on The Dating Game, because this bachelor looking for love back in 1978 is actually a serial killer.
This afternoon, we have learned a convicted pedophile who admitted to assaulting dozens of children will not be getting out of prison today.
A lawyer for Wayne Chapman tells us several things need to be done before he's officially released. Many people are upset that Chapman will even go free. WBZ's Adam Myler has more now at noon from Shirley.
Well, it is a case that has never gone cold for the family of Holly Peranian, who would have turned 40 years old last month. Today, investigators renewed their call for the public's help with this investigation. Much of it centered on this T-shirt that you see behind me, which was among items found in the area of Brimfield, where Holly's remains were uncovered back in October of 1993. Take a closer look at it, with a very distinguishing color and Boston logo. Within the past 6 months, further forensic testing has been done, thanks to advances in testing procedures. Investigators want some very specific information related to it, and Holly Peranian's family hopes to finally have some closure.
Koberger has yet to enter a plea, but his previous attorney said he believes he'll be exonerated. The indictment follows his December arrest at his family home in Pennsylvania. More than 45 days after Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found brutally murdered in this college house. According to court documents, Koberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath at the crime scene, and his white Hyundai Elantra seen driving here during a routine traffic stop.
Devastating crime. They compare, in the annals of crime, they compare absolutely with Jack the Ripper. Perhaps even worse, because they were quiet and deadly.
The Strangler's first victim was Anna Slessers, a 55-year-old divorcee, brutally beaten and strangled while a parade passed down her Back Bay Street. From June 1962 until January 1964, 10 more women would die the same way.
Believes he may have uncovered evidence that could lead to Molly's murderer. A lengthy article in the Worcester Telegram chronicles a custody investigation that ended with Gerald Battistoni serving up to 12 years for raping his girlfriend's daughter.
The former Tacoma and Seattle resident is a suspect in 36 sex killings in Colorado, Utah, Oregon, and Washington. And now he is being questioned in connection with 2 murders at a sorority house at Florida State University in Tallahassee.
As officials announce a suspect is now in custody. Multiple news outlets now reporting the suspect is 59-year-old Rex Feuerman of Massapequa Park.
Let's go off the district. Let's put out 30 seconds last round. Roger. 008, hold us heading. I'm in the cube 004. How does that look? Looks good, Steve, and all systems are okay here. Winds are westerly at 10 knots. Okay, this is NASA 1 calling 10 seconds now. 10 seconds, roger. 0, 5, 4, 3, 2, I've got a blowout. Day for 3. Get your pitch to 0. Pitch is out. I can't hold altitude. Alright, get help. I'm trying to live in emergency. Flight call. I can't hold it. She's breaking up. She's breaking.
Okay, there's a crash and burn of Steve Austin, and hopefully I won't crash and burn, but I'm feeling pretty energetic right now. We have a small audience at the moment. They'll probably jump in. YouTube, we didn't put out the notification ahead of time, so I just put it out about 10 minutes ago, and YouTube limits, I think, to one a day. So probably very few people are aware that we're on, but hopefully some people will check in after. Right now, we're under 40. If you total together all of our we've got 4 or 5 on YouTube and 31 on Twitter and 1 on Facebook. So guys, it's all right though. We have a good show coming up. This was pre-scheduled actually. So we're going to be doing very serious and hard topic, but one that I think we can maybe make a difference in. This is the Evansdale murders. And in about an hour and 45 minutes, I will have Bill Noguera coming on from Corcoran Prison in California, where he's been tasked with this case for the last few weeks, and he has a lot of good insights into it. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Hopefully, it's gotten warm today, so I have a fan on. Hopefully that is not being picked up by the mic. So I'll probably turn that off after. But for now, so let me bring in, it's very hard doing these cases. This was, a lot of people are really into true crime. I never was, but definitely the ones with the kids, I'm like, I'm not doing them. And then when you start going together to look up pictures to make a slideshow for it, it just brings it all back. So on the right, in the pink shirt, is Elizabeth, and this is her cousin with the earrings, Lyric, a beautiful name. In the town of Evansdale, Iowa, this was 2012, a little afternoon on a warm, beautiful summer day. They were abducted bikes off a bike trail, and bodies were found in December, 20 miles away at a remote location. The case remains cold. It's been 12 years now. And unfortunately, it seems to have faded from public consciousness. And it's troubling because it feels like it's a case that's solvable. And you'll see why as we go through the clues in it. And if you heard my last show when I was talking about it, you'll see we have to be really careful here because the clues really do point strongly to somebody, but not direct evidence, just powerful clues. And there's a specific name and a specific person, but we're not going to put it out there because there is no direct evidence involving this person. Although he did insert himself into the case. So we will put his name out at some point, but you'll have to watch for it because I'll have to be very careful about how we do that. But, you want to focus on the victims. So these girls, they were cousins, and they would now be in college. They'd be like 20 and 23, I think. At the time, Elizabeth was 8 and Lyric was 11. So some more pictures on them. And you get a real sense of their playful personalities. Lyric, the older one, had it a little bit rough, and that we'll see in a moment, her dad, both their parents were meth addicts, and both of them went to prison shortly after this for meth stuff. And the father was a meth dealer. And he was sentenced to 96 years in prison. We'll see him shortly. He's out now, and he's trying to solve what happened to his daughter. Elizabeth on the left was described as a very feminine, kind of girly girl on one side, but on the other side, a little bit of a tomboy because she loves street hockey. But just, you could see their personalities right here. And their lives were distinguished. It's another picture of it. You can see, Lyric is kind of street tough and confident, and Elizabeth is very sweet and playful. This is Elizabeth's mom. I don't. Maybe that's her dad too. I'm not sure. But, just you can imagine what it's like to go through this. So the girls who went missing from their we're going to see in a little bit more detail. I'm going to go to a video for Gray Hughes that talks to, I think it might be Elizabeth's father, but it could be an uncle. I'm not sure. He's one of the family members. But your heart goes out to him. I mean, she's an attractive woman and looks by everything just completely normal. And to go through losing your daughter, I don't know how many other kids there are. We'll have to find out some more details on the families. And this is Lyric's parents. So that's the dad. He was sentenced to 96 years in prison after this, related to meth charges. But he's not really considered a suspect that I've ever heard in this case. And sorry about the dog barking. I don't see any evidence pointing towards him myself. But, you have to look at, we don't know what happened to the girls. We don't know what the police withhold details on the bodies. Were they sexually abused or not? I mean, more than likely, this is a case where you have a pedophile or something similar to that. But it's also possible there could be some dealings related to the father. And this could have been revenge killings or something to do with, with the dad. I mean, that seems unlikely to me, but you can't dismiss it when you have some shady players here. And that's the mom too. And she had her own issues. The dad is out. I don't know how he got his sentence shortage, and I'm not sure after how many years, but he did serve several years. And he now does a lot of work every week. He's going on different podcasts trying to get to solve what happened to his daughters. So, I do believe in redemption, especially, redemption for a serial killer. I don't believe in, or, because they're born that way, as Bill has talked about many times. And I agree with, there's something fundamentally wrong with their brain. But for most other people, redemption maybe is possible, right? Especially drug addicts and things like that. So I'm sure he feels awful that he wasn't there in the way he should have been for his daughter. So this is the location, and we'll see more on this on a map shortly, where the bodies were found in December. There's, I think, a drone picture of the police recovering the bodies. So those white sheets are the bodies. And it's a very remote region, known really only to hunters and fishermen, and to one other group, as we'll see shortly. But this is an area where there's a very small high school. The average graduating class is only 28. And I'm not sure to this day or what periods involved, but apparently it was a place that was known for high school kids to go party. And you know what that's like. You go get cases of beer or a keg of beer if you really know someone, or smoke some weed or whatever these, kids do at that age. So it's a pretty small list of people that would be familiar with this area. You got hunters from the area, and you got people that went to high school in that area. And it's very, very rural. Like I said, average high school class was 28. So it's a very, very rural area. And the area, as you'll see, is very remote, and it's very hard to imagine anybody knowing it unless they were familiar with it. It's very hard to imagine somebody a killer stumbling, getting off a highway and just finding this area and putting the bodies there. There's another picture of it there. And as we'll see in a moment from a video from Gray Hughes, and you can see if you look closely there, right up that kind of curve where the river kind of splits and goes off another channel, you can still see the sheets of the bodies there. And I think it's about a half a mile walk to get there. So whoever took those bodies there carried two little girls, whether there was accomplices or not, but they went a pretty good distance to get them into the woods, but they didn't bury them or try to obscure them in any way. Of course, you really couldn't bury them in December. But they didn't make any effort. They didn't make any effort to prevent them from being found. Hi, Pat. Good to see you back. Oh, I see some people are watching the replay. So hopefully the small numbers here are because you're over watching the replay on us. But that's okay. All right, this is a reason I'm putting his picture up. This is the police chief for the town of Evansdale. And again, I don't want to say too much, but I don't know. Let's just keep it in mind. This is the police chief who ran the investigation in this little town. And I'm not at all suggesting he's a suspect. But again, we're going to lay out the breadcrumbs and people can decide to help us figure it out. So the girls were found by a lake, and the FBI and other specialists were brought in to search the lake. And I think I'm not sure if they drained part of it. I think they did. But as you'll see, the girls did not go for a swim. It's extremely unlikely. They didn't take off their shoes or leave the shoes behind. It was not really the kind of place that kids would go into. It was one of those lakes that's very sludgy and mossy and stuff, especially where the girls' bodies were found. It's just not. It's just that's a dead end. It's the police searching it. All right, so this was surveillance video captured of the girls, and we'll see a little bit more on this. Hughes does a good job going through the map and to see where they went, how far they traveled, but they were picked up on their bikes. These are the last known images of them. Eventually, they got to the bike path and were on their way to the lake. This looks like it's a memorial near where they were found, but this isn't exactly where they were found. It's in the area, so we'll show you more clearly shortly. There's that picture again of the girls on the bikes. All right. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to skip us through here. Before I do, all right, just the basic details. So again, it was a July week, so no school or anything like that. The town is 2,000. The town next to it, that it's basically attached to, Waterloo, is more populous. Waterloo has a population of, I think, 65,000. So there are people there. There's an airport at Waterloo. People from Waterloo would, for instance, ride their bike into Evansdale to use that bike path. So there are people there. There's supermarkets. It's not remote right there. They were found 20 miles away. We'll show you that map, in a much more rural area. Their bikes were found. So the girls, they were staying with their grandmother at that day, as they did a lot. And the grandmother was alert. And when they didn't come back by 2:30, I think they left around noon. And when they weren't home by 2:30, she knew right away something was probably wrong, and she called the police. And pretty quickly, the town organized and got people out there. And it was the fire department that found the bikes on the bike path. There was someone that came into the case and reported that he saw those bikes at 12:20 or 12:28, 12:27. There's a couple of different times I've seen out there that he was on his own bike and had to kind of swerve to get around those two bikes on the path. And so later on, when he heard what was going on, he approached the police and let him know that he had seen that. And actually, his picture is in the papers with the police. So here's somebody that got himself involved. Oops, I didn't quite share this here. So let me bring this in for you guys. All right, so this is Gray Hughes' channel, and he does good work with looking at Google Maps and that kind of thing. So this is Drew Collins. I'm actually not sure. So Elizabeth's last name was Collins. I don't know if this is her father or an uncle. And so I suggest, if you really want to see a longer version of this, you can listen to him talk about, because he was part of the search and he's not a suspect. So he's a victim here. And so it's pretty interesting to hear him talk about the case and what went on, and you'll learn more that way.
Phone in it. And
something when you say
Was it found over, like there's a path and then there's a fence on the left? So let
Yeah.
me go down. Let me go to the other.
All right, so he's going to bring us in here and
We'll
show
go
us.
back to the timeline in a minute. But
Yeah.
since you're already bringing this up, like let's say I'm down.
So here's the lake. There's a highway there, bike path, and you see trees.
On the path right here. And
Okay.
there's a fence right here.
So here's the
Yeah.
here's the bike path. So as you can see, the way this picture is taken now, it's somewhat obscured by the brush and tree at that time of year. There is a highway nearby and on the others nearby, but it's the way it looks like it's kind of depressed here a little bit between, the elevation. Maybe if someone, it actually turns out to be a pretty isolated place, that because of the size of the population, maybe a predator recognized this as a perfect trap, especially with the bikes. They kind of channel people.
Way.
Like towards the lake, or the other direction.
Yep, and that
Okay.
it was on the lake side. It wasn't on the because if on the right side there you got the lake, and then on the other side is Highway 20.
So what was found was the two girls' bikes. They were found on the bike path. And the other thing that was found was the younger girl, Elizabeth's pocketbook, which had a cell phone in it, had been tossed over the fence. And that was found late. They first found the bikes, and that was found a little bit later by the firefighters. So they were searching, obviously, over that fence. But so this looks like it's kind of a tough fence for those little girls to have climbed. That seems unlikely. So obviously, whoever took them made them leave the bikes behind and tossed the pocketbook over the fence. So even if someone went up to these girls and said, "Hey, there's been an emergency with your parents or your mom or something like that, come with me," they would have known that something was wrong when he was tossing their pocketbook over the fence. So whether this was one person or there were accomplices, and as we've seen from Delphi, it seems like one person could do it if he has a weapon. He has a gun that could scare. Richard Allen controlled Abby and Libby with a gun. So that could be the case here. Or, of course, there could be accomplices. And you're going to have the difficulty of, even though it's not a busy area, it is still a bike path. You can see at the end of this one here, there's somebody walking or riding at the end of it. So you got to get these kids into your vehicle pretty quickly before somebody sees you. So it's a very bold crime. And apparently only, according to the FBI, there's only been 14 similar examples of multiple children abducted during broad daylight, going back to the 1960s when they first started keeping those stats.
Mm-hmm.
So it was over the fence on the lake side, a little further down than where you're at.
Okay.
There's kind of an open fence up here if you keep going.
Yeah.
And
I can
you
probably
see like a.
Yeah, I can probably
There's
go
not-
further later. So, but it's a little odd though that there's a fence and it was found on the other side of the fence, right? Because they would have been on. Yeah, and that fence was there at the time, right?
I think maybe Gray's a little confused here. The bikes were not found on the other side of the bench. So when he says I think at this moment he's confused. But the bikes were found on the path, and it was the pocketbook that was found on the other
fence,
side.
I mean, obviously, because he said it's over the fence. But if they were on this path, somebody would have had to like intentionally throw the items over, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of when things got. Well, once I seen that it was their bikes, I was pretty scared. And then when we found the purse over there, I looked over there. It didn't look like anyone was walking back there because there was like brush. It was real thick with brush, and nothing had been stomped down or nothing. So it had obviously been tossed over the fence.
Yeah.
So we kind of were getting worried then, and I went from there.
Sherry, I see it's your first live. Welcome. We usually have very productive and civil chat here, which Tom administers with a gentle touch. So thank you. Hillbilly, good to see you, man. Hillbilly says he's not a fan of swimming in lake water. Yeah, neither am I. I've always been more of an ocean guy. Those lakes seem a little scary.
Yeah. So how about let's just go back in time. So from now over the early on and through the years, you've learned where they were basically before they disappeared, right? So, I mean, I've seen video. What's
We've
that?
got a couple witnesses that kind of saw him here, and then like where you're at right now is my street, Groven Boulevard. They went down towards the river.
Okay, this direction, Cedar River.
Yep, and then there's a truck repair place down there, up on the top of that Groven Street right there. Yep,
right there.
And in there, and I was actually talking to the lady that's in there as my daughter was going by, and she goes, "Oh, there goes one of your babies."
Oh wow, that's crazy. Really? Yeah.
Because I take my trucks for work there to get repairs done on, and she had called me, or I had called her that day.
So do you think that, because when we were talking earlier, this is right where the surveillance camera was, on this building right here, facing this direction, and you see him riding by. So was it that pass that you think when the person in the shop said, "Hey," or was it when they came back the other direction? Because you mentioned they drove back.
I do not.
Yeah, I mean,
but apparently towards the river, and then they were in the River Forest truck parking lot, and then they at some point turned the other direction and headed towards.
So the girls didn't go straight to the bike path. It's not known why they went some, but kids, who knows what they're going to look at first, right? They're kids, they're little kids, So another thing that may come up in this case that'd be interesting is that we don't know what time. So the grandmother called at 2:30, and looking at the timeline from when they left the house. So the eyewitness who reported seeing their bikes at 12:20, or even another version of the report that I saw said 12:27. That puts these kids moving, not impossibly fast, but maybe surprisingly fast for two little girls that are just out for a joyride, and that are clearly not on a mission to get anywhere fast because they're going in different directions first. In fact, they went away from the bike path initially. That puts them, that seems to not quite fit the timeline. It's possible, but I think most of the experts think that the girls were probably taken sometime around 1 or even after 1. And so this eyewitness unusually puts those bikes there with no sign of anybody else at 12:20, which in a weird way reminds me of Richard Allen, his initial statements at Delphi, where he said that he never saw the girls, and he was at the bridge, and it was impossible. Now, it doesn't quite match up like that here, but that testimony doesn't work for me. It not impossible, but not quite work. And so it's possible that the guy just misremembered. But we'll see, there is some other activity that he claimed to do that might make it seem a little, was it because he took some specific actions. But we'll get to that. If not today, we'll get to it on another episode.
A grocery store area where there's right behind the grocery store, there's bike.
Just skip ahead a little bit.
Got him to there. That's where he gained control of him, was where they found the person, the bikes. I think fence is on Highway 20 side. There's really nowhere for them to go once they're in there. So if the purpose.
So you can see the path that they have to take here. If that, I don't know if that's bright enough for you guys to see it, but it's in red, and it kind of goes around the lake. Myers Lake is the name of it. And then it ends up down here where they're taken. And without getting out there to see it, it really has kind of a Delphi feeling to me. The thing about Delphi, and this is no connection to the Delphi case, but except understanding the way these guys think. When you look at the Delphi case, you have a trail that leads to the Monon High Bridge. The Monon High Bridge was not officially part of the trail. It's an old railroad bridge, and it's dilapidated. It's unsafe. And it's a weird bridge that it's about 700 feet long. It crosses Deer Creek just in the front, and then it goes on for another 600 feet. And then it ends at a dead end. Again, that's the Delphi case, not the one we're looking at here. But it ends in a dead end. Now, seeing the danger and the difficulty of crossing that bridge, most adults would walk out just as far as so they could look out over the creek. But most adults had no reason to walk all the way into this dead end bridge, especially it's just not a comfortable walk. Some of the boards were crumbling. And it's basically the only thing you're walking on railroad ties, and some of them are broken. And it's the thing is, it's over 100 feet tall. So you fall through, you're falling to your death. Now, I'm not saying it's that dangerous that you couldn't walk across it. And I think it would be normal for any kid to walk across it as a dare, but it would be not normal for adults to walk across it because it's an aggravation. But for any kids, it becomes kind of like that forbidden thing that you want to do, to walk across that unexplored, that little adventure that's in every kid that would want to get to the end of that. Well, someone that's from Delphi and someone that hung around on those trails and could observe how kids behaved, and this was a trail that was a trail that was frequented by kids, would very quickly learn that adults only walked out a little short way on the bridge, looked around, and then turned around and turned back. But that kids very frequently would walk to the end of the bridge, kind of as a dare, to say they did it. And what they would understand, what the predator would understand, is that once they got to the end of the bridge, it's private property with warning signs. So it's a dead end. So they'd be forced to turn around and come all the way back. But it's long enough to the end of that bridge that if someone was to abduct you there, it'd be pretty obscured from the front end of the bridge where you wouldn't be able to see them. Not impossible to see them, but it's far enough that you wouldn't necessarily hear anything and you wouldn't be able to see anything clearly. So it was a perfect trap. I call it like a Venus flytrap for a predator, where he looked at that and he said, this is a perfect place to grab kids at the end of that bridge, and in a way that you're relatively protected from anybody seeing it. And it looks like maybe here, in this case here, it might be similar to that, so you saw the other picture with the fences. Go back to that. So here's the fences. Not that easy for the kids to climb over, little kids especially. And so once they start down the path, they're probably not going to turn around until they get to the end. That's how kids are. You're going to go all the way to, it seems like a big adventure, and you're going to go all the way to the end. And we'll get back to, so let's see here. So you can see, all right, so here it is here. So this is the bike path there. So once you start down that fenced in bike path, you're probably going to go all the way to the end and then turn around. Now, I don't know exactly if they would turn around, or if there's a way for them to get out at the other end and go back and get home another way. That I don't know. And that would be really important to find out. And you can see Gray has marked this here, that a little bit further from where they were. So fence starts right there, if you can see that. And then the bike and the purse are found right on the corner of the lake. And then this maybe a little further up, the fence ends. And then right on the road there, right between where the trees end, is where a white SUV was sighted. And the police actually referred to that. But we don't know if that's actually connected to the case. So again, here's the fence here. And I had originally, my understanding of looking at this case was that you could see this bike trail from the highway. I think it's like a 3-lane highway, but it's a quiet 3-lane highway. But now I'm not so sure, at least on this part where they were taken, seems like it's pretty obscured by the brush. So the pocketbook was found on this side of the fence by the lake. All right, just looking through. I'll let this play for a second, see what they're.
Wish they had to take a little bit of a risk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, it's if you could see it. I've had other people that have come from out of town, and I've showed them, and they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize it till I put my eyes on it. What it's like. It's like what you would put cattle in to move them down to one direction.
Yeah, you can see
There's
it.
nowhere else."
Yeah, so that's very similar to that Venus flytrap type situation in Delphi, where you know that kids are going to go to the end, and you've kind of got them trapped. And I think a predator might see it that way. So I want to also let's get to the where the bodies were found. There's another video I have here that shows this even better, but all right, let's go to that other video. This is also on his channel.
And surrounding communities. The suspect likely used quiet.
All right, let's get to the actual. All right, so this is the area where they were found was a place for fishing and hunting deer, but very obscure, very rural. It was found by some hunters, and these hunters had been told. So the police have checked the background of all the licensed hunters that worked in that area. That was the focus of their search. That's a very logical place to start. And as far as we know, they didn't identify any suspects out of that, or they would keep like something like that quiet. But as far as we know, so again, here's where the bodies were found. Just giving a sense of how isolated it is. But another thing that I want to get to this to show here is it kind of shows a little bit here, but it was a pretty far distance to walk. All right, I think this shows it right here. So there was one road in and a parking area, and I think that was a half mile from where the bodies were found. And so it definitely was someone that had to know that area. It just doesn't seem likely. I think this is the parking area where they presume the killer parked. And you'd have to keep your eye open to all kinds of possibilities here. And one of the things is that the person who got rid of the bodies, as unlikely as this might be, was not the killer. And I have a reason for saying that. We'll go into it later. But I mean, that would be extremely rare for this type of killer, a pedophile type killer, to get someone else to help him get rid of the bodies. That would be very, very, very unusual. But you can't rule anything out. So again, this shows it too. Here's the yellow spots on the top is where Gray has marked the bodies were found, and then there's the parking area on the bottom. And to the left is the river. And so not an easy place to access at all, this location, if you don't know where you're going. And naturally, we're not going to know anything about the conditions of the bodies. The police aren't going to be able to reveal anything like that until they catch someone and there's a trial. All right, so let's bounce this out. And so Bill will be calling in about 5-10 minutes at the most. And so when Bill calls, we'll go through this discussion again. But what I have to do is turn up the gain on my microphone and then put the phone close to it and then sit back. Otherwise, the gain will be very powerful. Otherwise, I'll sound too loud. But Anna Lisette said that spot at Seven Bridges Nature Reserve has been described as sort of a peninsula on the creek. So she knows the case well. Thank you, Anna. Let's put that up there. Yeah, and it does look like a peninsula on the creek. Apparently, you can't drive to the exact spot. So yes, some hiking or packing. Yeah. And so the question, I guess, would be, could one person carry these? They were little girls, so maybe, but Lyric, I think, was 11. So I don't know. It's still probably substantial enough weight to have to carry two girls at the same time over a length like that through difficult terrain. Does that mean the possibility of accomplices? Or it's also possible that the killer just made two trips, but by doing that, you're really increasing your risk, because now you don't want to spend any more time in the area than you have to. So I just also think it's very risky to go out there and spend time carrying a body, even as an obscure, unless you really know the area is that obscure that someone is not likely to come upon you, a fisherman or a hunter or something like that, because you're spending all that time walking with a body and then coming back and getting another body. What if somebody comes across you? No. Anna says there are many coincidences between Delphi and Evansdale, including reverse dates. Yeah, I saw that. But law enforcement is very sure the cases. I mean, I feel they're not connected to Anna. They're not that close. I looked it up once before. I think it was a couple hundred miles, but that's certainly in that area. People are used to driving those distances, so it could happen. But I feel like Richard Allen, the evidence is pretty slam dunk against him, so I don't really feel it's likely. There's no evidence that Richard Allen ever spent any time in that area, and it would be someone that had to know that area. Oh, it is still warm in here. I got to put on the fan again. So I don't know. You don't rule anything out with an unsolved case, but I think it's very unlikely that this is connected to Delphi. I think it's connected just in the sense that you have a predator that possibly acted in similar ways because they have similar things on their mind. They're looking to take advantage of kids in an isolated area, on an area where, because the way the path or the bike trail channels, you can kind of predict to a certain degree where they're going to go, and maybe you have a understanding beforehand of how isolated it is and how limited the other traffic is. So you would have to be familiar with that bike path enough to know that if you're going to abduct these girls and walk them, say, I'm not sure the distance, but say you had to walk them 100 yards to get to where your van was, you have to be sure you're not going to come across somebody else. So if you're in a path that's very busy, you don't want to take that chance. And in fact, as I said, there is a witness that has come forward and said he saw the bikes there, and he was there around the same time they would have been, very close to it anyways. And he was on a bike, so he easily could have come across them. So this murder was definitely very brazen. I don't know what the frequency of bike traffic is there, but all it takes is one biker to an adult to go by at a fairly good speed to see something suspicious, such as one guy trying to handle two girls at gunpoint or whatever, if they're screaming for help or something like that, or struggling or anything. And anything about it at all looks suspicious. So let me know what you think about Anna. See if you agree with that at all. Yeah, the bikes, I think, were fairly close to the gate that goes into the lake. Yeah. Just reading through the comments. Okay, guys. Well, thank you. Appreciate you guys being here. And I think this is something we want to put our attention into for the reasons I said, like in the Delphi case, that there seems to have been things the police could have done. And I'm not saying they didn't do them. They may have done these very things. and they just don't have. I think I'm gonna need these, and they just didn't get enough evidence to declare somebody a suspect. So they may have suspects, and they just are stuck with it because they didn't have enough evidence to get a warrant to search his house or something like that. So the evidence that I'm going to point to, I'm going to leave a trail of breadcrumbs to it, is like that. It's one of those things where it wouldn't be enough to get a warrant. It would be enough for any of us to say, aha, wow, that looks super likely. But it's because it's not evidence of anything, it's highly circumstantial evidence. Then you end up, there wouldn't be enough to get a warrant to search this guy's property. So you'd have no choice but to hope he slipped up in some way. So it must be, if this person is a suspect or even a person of interest, it must be very frustrating to them. So Anna says that they were young, help find a lost puppy or kitten. Could that? Yeah, absolutely. And that's a common trick that they use. But my only problem with that is, well, first of all, by the time he grabbed the pocketbook and threw it over the fence, they certainly knew. Now, unless he came back, and which seems extremely unlikely, and threw the pocketbook over near the bikes, came back just to do that, then that part seems unlikely. But also, would kids leave their bikes behind? I mean, and these are relatively poor kids too. I mean, so your bike is your prized possession. That, well, one of the girls had her cell phone in her pocketbook. You're not going to give those things up to go look for a puppy. So at the most, a stranger could have used that trick to get them to stop and listen to them. And I think that's as far as it goes. I don't think, there's no way kids are going to leave their bikes behind. But you're not the only one that says that. And this Collins, like I said, I don't know if that was the father or the uncle that interview was with, but he kind of suspected the same thing, that maybe somebody used a trick like that. So yes, they were younger. I think 8 and 11, if I remember right. There's also a really good article, and I'm going to have to turn this off, on a site called Unresolved. Really, really in-depth article. Lays out a lot of suspects. If somebody emails me, I'll send them the link, but you can find it on unresolved.me. And just search up the Evansdale murder. Just search the Evansdale murders on the Unresolved. And this is a really detailed article. And I don't think any of the suspects that they listed here are involved. Can't rule them out. But where it's more disturbing is that it shows how many of these predators are out there. There's a disturbing number of them that are out there operating. So again, guys, thank you. And any second now, Bill will be calling. And Bill is calling from Corcoran Prison in California. He was on death row for 40 years. His sentence was commuted last year from death to life. So he was transferred to Corcoran. But he spent 40 years with serial killers on death row. He's not a serial killer, but he was serving time with those guys. And he, at some point, decided he wanted to study them. So he got to know them, interviewed them. At times, even let them think that he was one of them. And as a result, he got insights into how they think. And so I know some people get upset that I'm platforming him, but I mean, he's in prison. So I don't think that I'm really platforming him. He does have other media outlets, and he has helped solve the cold case. And because of that, has Netflix, has the rights to it, and there's a book coming out about it, probably as early as this summer. So, I mean, there's things going on with him that are interesting. I don't think that I'm platforming him. I think that we're using him to help learn about how these guys think. All right, so this should be him right here.
This is Global Talent. You have a prepaid call from Williams A. Noguera, an incarcerated individual at The California State Prison, Corcoran, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now.
Sometimes it doesn't go through.
For using Global Tel Link. Hey, Kevin. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, good. There was a delay there. I know sometimes we have a problem getting through the system. Good to talk to you, Bill.
Yeah, good to be here.
We are live, and so people are interested in this case, and I've given people a background on the case, and obviously that's something we're going to be doing over a few episodes. But to start with, what were your, now you just first looked into this case a few weeks ago. So what were your early thoughts on the case and some approach to possibly solving this case or coming up with a list of suspects?
Yeah, well, we're going to need the public's help. Somebody saw something, and they may not believe that that's something that they saw was relevant. But information is out there. No one's able to just take two kids and no one sees it. That's the first initial, I guess, thoughts on the case. And then I began to think about the predator, because this predator is a pedophile. He is a twisted individual. There is no redemption from this. Now, I want people to be very clear that, in my opinion, a person that kills children, a person that is this type of predator, there is no rehabilitation, there is no redemption. This person is going to keep doing what he does. And then, of course, comes the following thoughts regarding this issue, and that is, who could do this? What is the type of person that would do this? And, of course, a lot of different images pop into people's minds when I say this. Could be, a person that looks like a gremlin, a person that looks like a monster, a person that looks deviant, evil. Well, all those descriptions would be incorrect. The person that did this looks like the person right beside you. You really can't tell him apart. And in my opinion, the person who did this is familiar with the territory. He is a member of the immediate community, meaning he could be from Evansdale. That's a very small town in Blackhawk County, which is about 5,000 people. He may not be from Evansdale, but he's from the immediate vicinity of that town. I would say that he lives anywhere between 10 to 20 mile radius at most. And those are my biggest immediate thoughts on the case, because as soon as I started reading about it, and by the way, there's not that much about this case. I believe the law enforcement has kept it that way, so in case someone does come forward, there isn't a lot of information that was placed out there that people could gather to gain attention. So I think they're this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Bill, you still there? Don't usually get that disconnect. So, Bill?
Kevin, you there?
Oh, yeah. We lost you for a second, but yeah.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay. So for me, the thing that makes this case potentially, you want to start with a list of suspects. So if you have somebody that's killed in Manhattan, your list starts out at 20 million people, and it's impossible, right? But here you have a couple of big clues that help you narrow down the list. One is, like you said, they would have to be familiar with the bike trail in Evansdale. Now, Evansdale has a population of 2,000, but Evansdale is immediately adjacent, bordering the town of Waterloo, which has a population of 65,000. So that becomes too hard to come up with a list. But where the bodies were found 20 miles away, I don't have the name of that town in front of me at the moment. I'll find it in a second. But I found out for you, Bill, that the average graduating class from the high school there is only 28 people. So it's an extremely low population rural area. And it's an area where the only people that would have been using this particular place in the woods, it's not really a place for camping, but it was a place that hunters would go to certain times of the season and people fishing because there is a river there. But then also we found out that the high school during various times in history with that particular part of woods was a frequent place for kids to hang out, drinking and smoking and stuff like that. So those are your suspects there. For me is someone who probably went to that high school or who possibly worked in that area, but those are all most of the people that worked in the area went to the high school too, and who had some connection to Evansdale. Is that a logical place to start? Or
No, it's very logical, and you're right. There's a town very close there, Waterloo. There is basically an explosion of population compared to the 5,000 in Evansdale. So the person, we know that the bodies were found at Seven Bridges Wildlife Preserve, or it's kind of a wildlife place where there's raccoon hunting, there's other kind of huntings, and you're right. Kids.
Sorry, guys, we don't usually have these cutouts like this. I'm not sure why he's cutting out, but
Am I still cutting out?
It was going good, and then it cut out for about 15 seconds. Now you're back though.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes this phone system does this. I don't know if it's the GTL via pass system. It's just a horrible system.
Yeah.
But I believe that the high school, being a class of 27, I would start with around a guy who graduated between 8 and about 10 years.
Okay.
And go back maybe to about 25 years at the most.
So that would be this was 2012. So you're saying you'd be talking about someone 8. So that would be 2004, and then 25 before that. So about 2000. So about what 1985. So someone that graduated between 1985 and 2004, probably.
Yeah, and see, the reason that this is a case that I believe can be solved is because you have to understand that it is extremely rare for someone to abduct a child.
Mm-hmm.
It is even more rare for someone to abduct 2 children. So in my opinion, this guy knows the area, because if you just don't
Sorry, guys. Sometimes the problem on their end is if too many people use the phone at the same time at the prison, it can cut out. And it doesn't usually. I talk to Bill in the morning for that reason. It doesn't really happen at that time. He'll call me. He's in California, so 8:30 his time, 11:30 my time, and it's the perfect time to talk. But it's not a good time to do a show, so we tend to do it later. And I would like to even do it later than this, but you can't, because at that point it really breaks down. Bill, let me know if you get back. Or Bill, any signs of anything? Yeah. Okay, I'm still connected, but we can't hear anything. Bill? Okay, probably the best bet is to hang up and have him recall. Bill, I'm not sure if you can hear me at all. So I'm going to hang up and then call me back. Well, that sucks. I'm sorry, guys. I've done a few of these with Bill on here, and that's the first time he had a problem on his end. All right, so let me turn this stuff back down to normal. All right. Thank you for being patient with us, guys. So I'm just going through this article on the unsolved. So at the time, Lyric's father, Dan Morrissey, was a 36-year-old father of two who had already divorced Lyric's mother, Misty. As interested parties began to look into, okay. Oh.
This is Global Telling. You have a prepaid call from William A. Noguera, an incarcerated individual at the California State Prison, Corcoran, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial. Thank you for using Global Tel Link. Hey, Kevin, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, so I went downstairs to the day room, and I'm hoping to finish this episode with this type of phone, which is the phones that most people have never heard of, which is on a wall.
That's true. Well, it sounds good and clear now.
So,
thank you.
the last thing you heard me say.
Not sure, because I went to so.
I was kind of talking about the perp and him living between 15 and 20 miles of the vicinity, and that when he abducted children, this is a very rare instance. No one does this. Most serial killers have an MO, have a signature. To take two kids at the same time is extremely rare. Now, a lot of people will think of the Delphi cases, and those are two young, white, preteen adolescents. Same type of situation, and that is very rare. And that person was closer to the community than people thought. So we're looking for a person very close to the investigation, a person believe will do things to make himself known. Now, profiling is something that's a very unique science. You have to have special insights. In my opinion, the person who did this, and again, I've only seen this case 2 or 3 weeks ago when you first brought it to my attention. This case right here is about a person who is in that community, very close to it, and he has put himself in a position to be noticed. Maybe not in big red letters across his forehead, but he's close enough to monitor what law enforcement's doing, or at least he feels comfortable that he knows what's going on.
And that's common from your experience, the serial killers and similar type killers that you've talked to. That's common with these guys.
In some cases, a good example is William Suff. He's known as the Riverside Killer. He volunteered and did a lot of talks to the community about sex workers and that we have to eradicate them from the community. Well, of course, he was pushing an agenda. He also volunteered to deliver the furniture that was being used by the unit who was set in the police department, law enforcement department, to actually catch him. So he would joke around with the officers and kind of look at the big board of what was going on. So he felt he had his finger on the pulse of the investigation. He may not have it, but he feels more comfortable.
Right.
This is the type of person this guy is.
So let's go back to the moment of the abduction. We obviously don't know what happened, but the 2 bikes were found on the bike path. Now, I just showed images to these guys. You can't see them, Bill, but the bike path is pretty wide. You could probably drive a car down it if you want. And there's a fence on either side at that spot that's about 4 feet tall. On the one side is the lake, and on the other side seems to be a 3-lane highway, but in that location, it's sheltered enough from shrub and stuff like that at that spot someone from the highway probably couldn't see them, so it ended up being pretty secluded. And so the bikes are left on the trail, and then Elizabeth's pocketbook is thrown over the fence. The fence looks like to be about 4 feet tall. It's a chain link fence. Does that tell you anything about that moment of the abduction, you know, being able to control two girls like that? And
Well, controlling two children. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. Controlling two children, 8 and 10 years old, is not difficult for a man to do. Even for a strong woman to do it, it's not difficult. This perp is male. He's not female, or she's not female. He is a male, and he's over the age of 29 years of it, and he's probably a little.
I'm not sure if you can hear me, Bill. Unfortunately, we lost you again. So the prison must be just experiencing a lot of calls right now. So we'll give this some more time and see if he comes back. You can see where it's extremely frustrated, and that's... Oh, Bill, we lost you for like a minute.
Okay, can you get? Am I there again?
Yeah, you're back again. Yeah.
Okay, so he probably coaxed him. He's 29, a little bit before the age of 42, 43 years of age, and he coaxed him. He's male, not female, and he may have had a puppy, a small animal, to draw them close enough and have his vehicle close enough to be able to grab them quick enough.
But do you think the girls would leave their bikes behind? And certainly once he grabbed their pocketbook, Elizabeth's, and threw it into the woods, there was no coaxing anymore at that point, right?
No, that's after. That happened after. The girls were probably off the bikes, walking them on the trail.
Yeah.
He got close to them. He had something to coax them close to him. Once he got close enough, he felt that he was securely invisible to most people passing by or anybody around there. He grabbed them.
Yeah.
This is a weekday.
Yeah.
It is the 13th. It's a Friday. Most people are not in the lake. Most people are not on the trails. It's in the middle of the day. Most people are working. Once he grabbed one, he subdued her very quickly. He may have hit her to deem her unconscious and grab the other one as quickly as he can. The bicycles then were an afterthought. It's very curious that he grabbed her purse, which tells me he's probably a little bit younger than 35, because he grabs the purse and obviously he looked inside. Maybe there's some money in it. Maybe he thought, hey, let's not leave that there. He could look at it, didn't see anything, or he saw a couple bucks, grabbed it, and then tossed it. That tells me he's younger than the further reach of 42. He's probably closer to 35 or 34.
Well, she had a phone in she had a phone in there too, though. So is it possible that he tossed it so they wouldn't be able to track through the phone? Or
absolutely. And him being in that age group of 29 to 34, 35 years of age, he would know that a phone can't be tracked.
Yeah.
It could have GPS. It could have the locator system by iPhone. There's a lot of different ways that phone. So he discarded it because obviously you can track the person with that phone.
right. Now, Evansdale, there were no other similar cases before or after this. I'm not sure about Waterloo nearby, but I think we would have heard about them. So talk about the fact that this guy, did he do anything similar to this before, like a trial run? And how come he hasn't acted since?
He could have, and he more than likely had a trial run. You don't murder the first time you go out to do something in most typical cases. Now, there are cases they have, but for the most part, we're playing with percentages here.
Yeah.
The likely percentage is that he's done this before. He may not have killed, but he definitely abducted, or he has abducted children. He may have tried to force them into a car. So we're looking for a guy that probably has something in his background. But we must take into consideration that this is a very small town. The reason that's relevant is because usually perpetrators in very large cities like Los Angeles, San Diego, Orange County, etc., those type of predators are more developed. Like police departments in those cities are more more developed because of the experiences they've had with serial killers and the like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. More experience with the police and more experience with encounters with kids, and just everything is more experienced. Like you said,
he's more advanced.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure, he's seen more television that's probably more geared to a bigger city.
Mm-hmm.
He's been exposed to high school, possibly college, where he had experience with different women. He knows he doesn't like women, he likes children.
Mm-hmm.
So he begins to experiment. This happens in larger cities a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the police department. The police departments are geared for that in larger cities. In smaller cities, they're a lot smaller.
Right. And I think a big problem, Bill, too, in the larger cities is that you can blend in. So you can do it and then not get caught and then act again and again and again and again. Whereas if you're in a town of 2,000 people like Delphi or like this here, now once you do it, if everybody's on the lookout for any strange behavior, so you now all of a sudden you really have to be extra careful not to do it again, because you're probably, the chance of getting caught is much higher, right?
Correct. I would go further than that. Because larger cities produce more advanced killers for the most part, serial killers.
Yeah.
And police department.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. He'll probably come back in a few seconds, but we do. Tom, I'm staying away from as far as the mic as far away from the mic as I can. I had to turn the gain up all the way because my cell phone isn't very loud, in order to catch Bill's voice clearly. So I'm staying away from it, and hopefully he'll be back momentarily. Bill, we lost you for about 30 seconds.
Oh, wow. This is getting really bad. I apologize to the audience for this. I don't know what's going on with this system. What I was saying was that you're right. But even more so with a guy like this, you have an individual who has not been exposed to a large city's attitudes towards more things,
right,
like pedophilia. In big cities, you find communities, and I know it sounds bad, but you find communities where guys are into this stuff. So you tend to develop more. Ideas are exchanged, and you see how other ones behave. In this particular situation, this guy is isolated. He is not developed, especially as a predator. So his appetite is diminished as well. So please hear me on this and what I'm saying. His appetite is diminished. Think of a person who hibernates for survival. This individual.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Once he did this, he's going to hibernate. There's going to be a cooling off period longer than most, because he understands the environment cannot sustain a person who's doing this every week or every 2 weeks, like someone in a large city.
Yeah, it's definitely. So we start with the list of people that went to that high school, okay? And in that period you mentioned, so like say starting with 1985 up until say 2005, and then if we probably would have to expand it on both ends from there too if nothing turned up. But then I think what else would we be looking for? We'd be looking for someone on that list who also has a connection to the Evansdale area, or at least the Waterloo area, which is 20 miles away. Is there any particular clues we could be looking for in that? Something. It's because 65,000 people in Waterloo. That's a tough list to look at.
I believe the person has already made himself known. As I mentioned, he is in a small community, and he cannot sustain a killer that does this all the time. So he has to continue to relive this. How he does that. Can you still hear me, Kevin?
Yes, that's a really good point. Thank you. Go on.
He sustains himself is by reliving the moment. How he relives the moment is to plug himself into the investigation in some manner. Meaning, he already could have made himself known to the police department. He already could have made himself known to the community in some way, that he's helping in some way. That's who you're looking for as well.
Oh, one thing I want to go over. How much time do we have left on this call, Bill? Can you tell?
You got me. About 5 minutes, and I'll call back.
Oh, you got 5 minutes. Okay, good. So I want to look over. I got here a list from the FBI, their profile list.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Oh, we got 6. All right. Yeah. So we'll do that. Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'll bet.
Yep. Okay, guys, thanks for being patient with us here. So Bill's going to call right back. So what I'm going to go over with him next is the profile that was created by the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Those are the Mindhunter guys, and concluded that the alleged culprit of this attack was, and they have a list of, looks like about 10 different things here, and they're pretty interesting. So I'm going to go over it with Bill and see what he thinks about it.
This is Global Tel-Link. You have a prepaid call from
Williams A. Noguera.
an incarcerated individual at the California State Prison, Corcoran, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial. Thank you for using Global Tel-Link.
Hey, Bill, can you hear me?
Hey, I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. All right. So this is a profile that was created from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Those are the Mindhunter guys, right? And this is what they concluded. This is their profile. A local, so number one on the list, a local that blended in with the Evansdale or Blackhawk County community who acted on an opportunity to abduct the 2 girls. I think that's in agreement with us so far. Stop me if I say something. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just say that is correct, because he would be disorganized. He didn't know those girls would be there. No one knew those girls were going to be there. So it was opportunistic. He saw them. He took them.
One of the things I want to mention about that, Bill, I was talking about this before you called. So in the Delphi murders, you have a trail that ends at the Monon High Bridge. The Monon High Bridge is a really unique bridge in that it's about 700 feet long. It's not officially part of the trail, and it's not safe. It just consists of the railroad ties. They're old, and some of them are crumbling and missing. It's not super dangerous. Kids could cross it very easily, but it's not something you would cross just for a pleasant walk. The creek is only at the front end of the bridge, so say maybe up to 100 feet, and then the bridge continues. So I think what the killer noticed was that the adults would sometimes walk out a little bit onto the bridge and stand over the creek, and then when they were done looking out over the creek, they'd turn around and come back. That the only people that would go to the end of the bridge, because they would find it irresistible, would be kids. And it was it was like a Venus flytrap for a predator, because at the far end of the bridge, that's where it's a dead end. After that, it's private property. There are warning signs, and it just goes down the hill. So once the kids went that way, you got them trapped. They have to turn around and come back. And I think a predator hanging around down there would quickly see that kids would go to the end of the trail, and all you'd have to do is follow them up, and you got them trapped. They have no choice but to wait till you get to the bridge before they start coming back, So I'm wondering is it possible, again, opportunistic here in this case, but still the killer may have identified this spot earlier as a perfect spot to do it.
It's a very good possibility that the perpetrator knew that this trail existed. He knows the community, and he knows that kids during the month of July, which is summertime, are going to be on these trails. It's even possible that he had seen this particular girls on that trail before. The reason I say that is because as a kid, I rode my bicycle, and as a kid, I made the same routes once or twice a week. So the chances increase of him seeing somebody there,
right,
and having the opportunity to take them.
Right. Okay, the second thing on the list was someone that was undoubtedly familiar with the Myers Lake Angel Park area, as well as Seven Bridges Park, meaning they are unlikely to have been a transient or a wanderer. Police insist that the location where the bodies were found, Seven Bridges Park, was without a doubt familiar to the killer, as it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as it is still relatively isolated and not well known outside of those from that region. So, anything on that? Or Anything to add?
Yeah, I think we're right on target. What we were talking about was that the person was probably going to high school in that area and probably knew the area because of it was known to the kids in that area, and they frequent that place, and they knew that no one would be there outside of hunting season, so he would be less likely to run across someone when he left the bodies there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next on the FBI's list, someone who would use quiet coercion to convince the two girls to go with him or her, either a trick or a ruse of sorts, or some kind of threat of violence. So that's kind of like similar to you mentioned about the dog. And one of the people on our stream also said the same thing right before you get on, that she suspected like the lost puppy. This is Anna had suggested this, the lost puppy trick.
Absolutely. Those are tried and true. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. That get kids to come close enough to you for you to snatch them like a spider. So
Yep.
That's absolutely correct. Hannah is correct in that.
Yep. The next was someone who was likely this is an important one here. You may disagree with this one. Someone who was likely facing significant stress in their life, and they have in parentheses legal issues, mental health problems, issues with a spouse, etc., who decided to lash out at two strangers instead of those close to them. What do you think about that?
Well, what they're talking about is triggers.
Yeah.
And I understand why the FBI's profiling unit would center on something like that. I disagree. Because as many serial killers that I know, there's only a couple that we can point to that when they had problems with their lover or they had a fight, they would go out and then attack a person of the same sex. And I'm speaking specifically of the scorecard killer, Randy Kraft. He is a homosexual serial killer who would live with another man, and if they had an argument or a fight, that would trigger him to go out in the car, finding a person, another male, having some type of aggressive sex with them, and then turning into a monster and killing the person and really mutilating the person really badly because of that rage. A rage because he was, society has taught people in the 50s, 60s, and 70s to hate themselves because they were gay. And all these different things that society had done to him, he kind of manifested when he was triggered. This is different. This is a different type of predator because, can you hear me still, Kevin?
Yes. Yep. Perfectly.
This is a different type of predator because this predator is focusing on children. No one, if he's sexual, this person is male, and he's a pedophile, and he shoots young girls because that is his appetite for these type of people. And is it because of stress, because of triggers, or because he has fight with his brother, or because he has stress in his life because of his job? I disagree with that wholeheartedly, respectfully, but I disagree with it.
So let me just stay on that for a second. Because I would agree with you that would not be the primary cause to somebody acting that way. But could it be the straw that broke the camel's back? So in other words, you have someone who does entertain these pedophile fantasies and fantasies that at the very least involve having sex with minors, but also maybe killing fantasies too, where the killing is and the ability to dominate somebody else, like you see with serial killers that target adults too. Could you have a serial killer or a pedophile, someone who had those kind of desires, but was just managing to contain themselves and not act on them, but then something triggered them and pushed them over the top, and now they acted on those fantasies that were already there? Is that possible? Oh, guess we lost him again.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. All right. Does that seem possible, Bill? That kind of trigger?
There are possibilities, but in this particular field, I go on percentages.
Yeah.
And the percentages are very low with something like that.
Okay.
Is it possible? Absolutely. Is it probable? Absolutely not. This person woke up that morning before anything happened. He woke up the day before that and the day before that, anticipating doing exactly what he was going to do. This was not a situation where it just happened. There was a bit of planning. He was anticipating going to there. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. and he was anticipating hunting. That's what he did. This guy is a hunter.
So he had probably been hunting for a long time before he finally decided to act on it. But going into places like that and fantasizing about what it would be like to do it, and does that make sense?
Absolutely. Serial killers can mix organized thoughts as well as disorganized thoughts. What I mean by that is a serial killer who organizes, sees a person and fantasizes about the victim. Then he goes out in the car, drives around and sees someone that reminds him of that person, and he immediately goes into work mode. That is what this guy did. He fantasized about it, which is an organized set of rules. And then as a disorganized killer, he went to the place, waited, and that's the person's or two people that came along and he grabbed them. He had no idea there would be two victims that day.
Do you think that someone like that, even if he's very intelligent, like say for instance a Ted Bundy, it seems like once they're in the grips of this urge that's compelling them, that they're more likely to make mistakes because they're just kind of so out of, in a different level of control, which may be similar to a disorganized killer. But is there some kind of mistakes that he might have made that we could be looking for or looking for signs of that?
Well, obviously, yes. And I think that the crime scene would be one of those places where you can see clues. We don't have access to that. We would have to go to the crime scene to take a look at it, to look at trees, to look at foliage. He could have carved something. He could have set up rocks in a certain way, patterns. There's a number of things that these guys do in those circumstances that are unique to them. So I believe that there are mistakes. Now, the urge. You asked about the urge. The urge is a very important part. Serial killers have impulses they cannot control. It doesn't make them a sympathetic figure. They are horrible monsters, but they are controlled by impulses. Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer, had 170 IQ, genius IQ, but he couldn't control his urges. Once they were set in motion, he had to do what he had to do, which was to rape, murder, torture, bind, and that's just the way it is with these guys.
So do you think that this guy, there's still more items on the list, but just I want to hit these questions as they come up to me. Do you think he remains in the area?
Absolutely. He lives in the area.
So he wouldn't have tried, so he hasn't acted on his urges since then, probably because of the high risk aspect of it. Now that it's been exposed, after the murders, it's been more exposed. But I guess it's too difficult for him to move somewhere else or even travel somewhere else to do this, or.
Well, he's experienced, like I said, he lives in a small community, so he's re-experiencing, reliving. He's gone back to the crime scene. And we don't know if he killed them in the Seven Bridges Park area. We don't know that because the law enforcement has not released that, so we don't know. If we knew that, we know that, in my opinion, he has returned there numerous times. It's very possible that he put the bodies there but killed them somewhere else. So he's actually reliving the moment somewhere else. And because he's a smaller pond fish, he's developed different types of skills of hiding in plain sight. He will, if given enough time, strike again. He will kill. It doesn't mean he hasn't killed already. Can you still hear me, Kevin?
Yes. Yep.
It doesn't mean he hasn't killed, but he may have gone further outside his area to do so and made sure the bodies didn't turn up.
And so he probably would frequent at least two areas, you're saying. So he probably would returns somewhat regularly to the scene of the abduction, to the scene of where the bodies were, and then potentially to any other scene that would be involved with the crime, such as wherever he killed them.
Exactly, to relive the moment. And he probably took tokens. He probably took trophies. He may have taken photographs.
I wonder if there's any way to draw him out. I guess probably not. He's probably smart enough for that. Like, you wouldn't expect him to come out on the anniversary of the girls' deaths. I don't know. All right, so we can go back to the list then. So next on the FBI's list, either someone who followed along closely with the investigation or someone that tried to distance themselves as much as possible.
This fucking post is horrible.
I can still hear you. You still there, Bill? Can you hear me?
I'm back now. What was the last thing you heard me say?
I heard you say something being horrible. So
60 seconds remaining.
okay, so let's take the call back again. Let's
Okay, let me call right back.
Thanks. Okay, guys, thanks for being here. We'll do one more call with Bill, and thank you guys. Let me know if this kind of thing is interesting to you. I think that this is a case where we can actually potentially make a difference, if nothing else, by bringing some light to this case. But this just feels like one where it's solvable for a lot of different reasons that I'm going to go into over time. And we've toyed with the idea of putting together a crew to go out there, and probably aren't going to have the funding for that. But it'd be great if we could raise about $5,000 and just go out there. And we already have some places that we'd want to start the search. But in any case, I'm open to any ideas that anybody has to try to draw attention to this case, because to me, that's what it's all about, is potentially making a difference.
Global Tel-Link, you have a prepaid call from
Williams State Noguera.
an incarcerated individual at the California State Prison, Corcoran, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel-Link.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Bill, I can hear you loud and clear. Was there something you wanted to add, or I'll just keep going down the list? Go ahead.
Well, I think it cut off a little bit, but yeah, this individual, he's going to come again and do this. It's just going to take him time.
Yeah.
He's still, at this time, I would say that he's done something else. We have to find the clues to find what he's done before or even after. It's most important to find this guy's trail when he first started.
Yeah.
And from there, we move out.
And I think there is probably some risk too, that he knows he's not going to be able to do something in that area. So maybe you plan some way to get away, which would be hard to do if you're married. And I think I'm going to guess that he probably is married, and that's probably what prevents him from acting more recklessly on his urges. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but please understand that these creatures are pushed by their impulses. Their impulses make them do things.
Right.
Look at the Gilgo killer, architect, educated man, worked in New York, lived in a nice home, had a wife, had children, and yet he was a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell these guys until you finally catch them.
Right. But obviously nobody has killed in Evansdale or Waterloo or in that immediate area since. So if he's acted on his urges, he would have had to travel somewhere to do it. And it's just, so it's possible he has done that, but it's hard to do that if you're married, unless you have a job, like you're a truck driver or something like that, that allows you to travel.
Yeah, I would think that he's not a truck driver. This guy's not a truck driver.
Okay.
This guy, he may be a business owner that owns something close to there.
Mm-hmm.
He may be a person who works in labor, like machinist, mechanic, but he's not a truck driver. If he was a truck driver, he wouldn't have left the bodies and taken them there. We have ample opportunities to pick up other bodies, meaning other women, children.
Right. And take the bodies further away. Yeah. Yeah. Like if you're obviously, whoever the killer is, he knows that area around the 7 Bridges very well, but yet he took the bodies there. If you live there and you're a truck driver, you take them somewhere further away than that. So,
yeah, every killer of this magnitude is different, but this is a monumental moment for him.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that he has killed outside this area, but for him, these 2 victims represented something very special to him. So he has immortalized them by taking photographs, by taking tokens and by doing it somewhere very close to his home.
So, yeah, back to the other point for the FBI, either someone who followed along closely with the investigation or someone that tried to distance themselves. That's, well, that pretty much is everybody. But I mean, they didn't really nail that one down too closely, but.
Yeah, the FBI generalizes a lot of things because they're looking to find what really happened. So they can't be too specific. They don't want to exclude anybody, but at the same time, they want to do their job. They're going to their P's and Q's. They're looking for different signs, and they're putting things out there, hoping someone will respond.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easier putting something out.
Not sure if you can hear me, Bill. We lost you about 5-10 seconds ago. Bill, you still there? Let's see if we can get you back. Wait until Bill gets back in. But guys, such a beautiful day out, and then to be discussing these kind of cases is really, really difficult. Oh, Bill, we lost you for about 45 seconds.
Yeah, I know. It's just a horrible system. But what I was explaining was that this guy has immortalized that moment in his life. Understand that serial killers of this magnitude have to, these are monumental moments for them. It isn't about the victims, it's about them and their actions. So that he killed so close to home, because I do believe he lives there. He's immortalized the moment. Also, the FBI cannot be too specific. They want to give generalizations, hoping someone will come forward and say, no, that's absolutely wrong. This is what happened. And it exposes a person for who he is.
Right. And I think the idea about profiling too is it's not that they have to nail it at every point, and it's more to give people a starting point as to where to maybe look, you know. But there are 2 items left on the list, Bill. So the second to last item on the FBI profiles list is someone that had likely attempted abductions in the past and had likely expressed interest in underage girls.
Oh, yeah, that's obvious.
Yeah.
This person is a pedophile, and he knows enough about himself that he was willing to go to that extreme of picking 2 children and murdering them.
Yeah.
So, yes, absolutely.
And then this last one's kind of a little unusual. So finally, they were likely someone that may have attempted to alter their own physical appearance as well as the appearance of their vehicle in the immediate aftermath, which was in July. So, if you're married, your wife would certainly notice that. So,
Yeah, I don't know if, look, that would be very difficult because if you lived in, say, the middle of your block and you had a yellow Pinto and suddenly you painted the thing black to alter it and you dyed your hair black, people are going to notice that before they notice you're normal.
Right.
So I don't believe that as well.
Right. And if so there was witnesses that said they saw a white van.
Your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
There were witnesses that said they saw a white van in the area, but that could meet a lot of workers, like you said, blue collar guys that own their own business or work for a small business. Those guys are going to drive some kind of a white van. There may be lettering on it that the witness didn't remember. But so that's a pretty wide range of things. A white van.
But it stands to reason that a person interested in abducting 2 children or a child or someone. Remember, this person was there for a reason. He knew that kids are around that area. It's summertime, and during those times of day, most people are working, so there won't be too many adults or adult supervision. So he was there with a purpose. And having a white van is not outside the possibilities of what this person should have been driving.
Right. I'm just going to check in with comments to see if anybody has any questions. Guys, if anybody has any questions, please put them in here. I'm just looking through. Hi, Slatherings. Good to see you, my man. He seems that Slatherings thinks there's a possibility this involved trafficking. Do you think anything might be the case like that?
Well, that would be, I don't think so. And the reason being that usually traffickers of children for pornography or for sex trade usually keep the bodies. They need the person alive.
Right. They don't kill them.
Just damage the goods.
Right. That's true. Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that. Unless something went wrong, I guess, right? So this is something that we saw in Delphi. There were a lot of reports or theories about trafficking and that kind of thing. And, it's certainly not to dismiss that, but it makes it, you kind of, something had to go wrong if you're trying to traffic and you destroy the thing that you're trying to traffic. So,
Well, only if the person was extremely strong. The children are very easy to control because with fear.
right.
So they wouldn't have to have damaged them. And if they were damaged, they would be damaged after they were sold into that particular culture or that particular field. And the person would never be close to Seven Bridges Park. They'd be outside the country or outside the county or at least outside the state.
So one of the people, I'm not going to mention him specifically, but one of the people that I'm looking at, Bill, would be somebody who's a little bit older than the range that we're thinking here. So I don't know. Do you have any thought? Would there any thoughts on that as to how? So Richard Allen, for instance, in Delphi was 47 when he killed Abby and Libby. And I think this could be something similar or even a little bit older than that. Obviously, that would be a very unusual though, right? Is that something that would make you feel like we're on the wrong track or I'm on the wrong track on that? Or
No, all the possibilities are live right now. I'm basically giving you a profile of what I see because of the actions. There are a lot of things that happened that day that are not being disclosed.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
And I don't know what those details are. So I'm only giving you a profile of what I see because of the actions we're able to read.
right. Oh, you may have cut out again, Bill. We'll see if it comes back in a minute. Looking to Slatherings. Good to see you, my man, and your comments. I'm trying to stay away from the mic. I'll turn it back down when this call ends. What if he's a contractor that does whatever for whatever? Yeah, I mean, I think that would be very unusual, but whenever you have an unsolved case, you have to be open to unusual things. And there's definitely aspects of this case that don't make sense. Oh, I'm sorry. I misread him. He was actually talking about, get you back, Bill?
Yes.
So he was actually not talking about human trafficking, but traffic in the area that makes it seem less likely that the girls went willingly.
Well, I don't think they went willingly to begin with. They weren't told, let's go to a candy factory and get in the car and let's go.
Right.
So the abduction was violent. It was not easy.
Yep.
He grabbed them, he forced them into the car, forced them into the van, tied them up, handcuffed them, and left the bikes there. And he did it quickly. He didn't push the bikes and hide the bikes. He merely took them and left them the way they were.
Yeah.
So this was very quickly done, and the person was in a hurry.
Yep, I agree. That's why I think that while he may have used some story as a ruse to get them to talk to him for a moment, but it quickly turned violent because those bikes were left there. I don't think kids would leave their bikes behind, and that pocketbook was ripped off and tossed into the woods right near the bikes. So I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was a violent encounter after he coerced him close enough so he could strike.
right.
Once he struck, I'm willing to bet that it was not, it was very violent. And, I feel horrible for those two kids and what happened to them. And unfortunately, there are people like this in the world, and we need to catch them as fast as we can. And I think that's one of the reasons I suggested, and I talked to you about this, Kevin, that I think you have to go out there. I think the Seven Bridges area, the Meyer Lake area needs to be looked at. We need more people on the ground to look at it and really investigate this case thoroughly. Law enforcement has not had any luck. It's going to take somebody else.
Yeah, we'd like to do it. And if nothing else, I mean, it's the kind of way where I'm open to meeting with anybody else, whatever it takes to get people out there, get the resources together. This is an all hands on deck kind of thing. So we're not trying to monopolize any information that we find. Whatever it takes to solve this case is the most important thing. So I agree with you.
Yeah, because every moment that this case is not solved, you have a predator out there that at any moment can decide wants to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he has to get caught. If we don't stop him, somebody else's child is going to go through the same situation. And we have the opportunity now to at least take a look at it again. Sometimes it's a fresh set of eyes that need to be involved.
Yeah.
Law enforcement, FBI, hey, God bless their souls. I hope that they do the best they can to catch this guy.
Yeah.
But it hasn't happened yet. It's been more than 14 years. It's time to look at this again.
I think it's getting a fresh set of eyes on it could help, and then just the fact that you have a YouTube channel could help get a little more exposure out there where somebody else, just whatever small way it takes to move the needle a little bit. I think it's important.
Yeah, they've kept everything very close to the vest. No one knows what really happened. I think it's time to release that evidence. I would love to be there on the phone with you on video, because we can do video calls now through this particular app, and show me what you're looking at.
Okay.
Let me look at what's going on. Let me do what I do best, and let me catch this guy.
Well, let's see if we can pull this off. All right. Well, thank you, Bill. We're getting to the end of this call, so appreciate it. And
60 seconds remaining.
Okay.
so we will talk again soon.
Yeah, my pleasure. And again, thank you to everybody listening, and let's do the best we can to catch this guy. It's time he get put in a cage. Okay. Until next time, be safe. Be aware of your surroundings. Your life could depend on it.
Thanks, Bill. Have a good night.
Take it easy.
All right, guys. Tom, I'm adjusting gains and volumes. Tom, let me know how this sounds. I can adjust it up or down from here. It's easier if you give me a little bit of feedback on it. Tom, how does this sound? Does this sound okay? Too loud? Too quiet? Just right? Tommy, can you hear me? Tommy, can you hear me? All right. Well, no one's saying anything about it sounding bad, so I'll just continue. We're not going to stay on too much longer. That's probably enough on this case for now. Let's just go into the news and see if there's anything new on the Karen Reed situation. Last time we were on, we had some pretty jaw-breaking stuff where Olivia released this message, this letter from the feds, which was stunning to me. Absolutely stunning. And it was also kind of stunning that she released it, because I don't think this letter looks too good. It doesn't damage them that much, but it's amazing that the feds seem to be opposing the release of any of this information, and they think that the protective order applies to that. However, the judge disagreed. She's like, I can't make you come in and explain your actions, but now that this is in my court, the protective order does not apply to me, and I can more or less do what I want with it. And as far as her agenda is to make sure that Karen has a fair trial, and that is and should be her only agenda. Still checking. I don't know what happened to Tom. Anybody just give me a sound check, because I adjusted this stuff on the fly. Slatherings, I mean, that's fair, but I think if you could maybe trust me a little on this. I've spent hours and hours talking to Bill since maybe November the first time, and don't agree with him on everything. And that's how life is, right? But I agree with him on these cases, on his observations about serial killers a lot. And he has an extremely intelligent mind. I gave him the information on this case, and it's his ability to research something is very limited in prison, but I found him pretty much on the same page as him the very next time I talked to him, and he had all the details mastered in his mind. So he's an extremely intelligent guy. He does have the kind of experience dealing with these kinds of killers that the rest of us wouldn't. Even the FBI in many ways wouldn't, because these guys, yes, they work with a profiler or something like that, or a psychologist, but they're telling a prisoner, a serial killer in prison is going to tell a psychologist or an FBI profiler, very different things that they might tell someone who's in prison with them. So it's a pretty interesting perspective to have someone who's able to get more confidential, free-flowing, seemingly honest information from them. So, but like with anything here, he's going to be wrong on things, and the FBI is going to be wrong on things, and obviously I'm going to be wrong on things. So, but I think if you trust me on this, you will find he's an extremely intelligent man. And anyways, all right. So back to the Karen Reed thing. I want to check and see if anything new is breaking. So Grant Smith Ellis, just 20 minutes after today's hearing for accused murderer Karen Reed, and all remains lonely at the barricades and caution tape. So they do have barricades set up now. Oh, why don't I get you a picture of that? All right, can you guys see this? I'll make it a little bigger for you. So this is what it looked like at the courthouse. You can see on the left there are barricades. We know the judge ordered 200 feet. And that looks like a lot closer than 200 feet to me. But in addition, you have the yellow tape on the stairs. Of course, this isn't for the trial, so maybe those barricades will be even further away. But I don't think there was... Well, Karen wasn't there today, so there was probably no reason for the horde to show up. So let's see what else is going on Twitter. If there's anything else interesting. I'm just going under hashtag Karen Reed and seeing what's coming up in the most recent. Oh, so here's something interesting. This is a letter. Oh, let's see if we can get this big enough. I think we want to see this. This is going to be very good. This is a letter. Let's see if we can get this big enough. Big enough, but all right. All right, so you guys can see that. Oh, man, it's hard to see. Damn. I'm going to have to do this a different way because I can't read that. That's just not big enough for me to read. So let's try saving the image. So I'm going to end up having to read this because I don't think I can post it big enough. This is really blurry because it's from the document. Dear Judge Canone, this might be the same thing. I don't know. Let's see. Dear Judge Canone, the United States Attorney's Office received a copy of the motion of Boston Globes to translate or modify the impoundment orders. The court may anticipate... Yeah, I think it's the same thing we had before that Olivia had. Sorry, guys. It's actually, I thought this was going to be a little different. Yeah. Okay. It's the same one we did earlier. So, like I said, amazingly, the judge is basically ignoring. Let's see how Grant describes this. So Grant Smith Ellis says the DOJ did not appear in court, but reminded the parties of their obligations under an existing federal protective order. The Boston Globe got some motions in the case released, but not state. He said not state grand jury minutes, but he actually means federal grand jury minutes. We are heading to trial on April 16th, barring a plea. Reed and her lawyers skipped today's hearing entirely in a move that left a small smattering of Reed supporters sullen outside the courthouse. And then there's a copy of the letter. So, see if anything else interesting showed up. Not much. So there's really not much else. Jennifer Coffindaffer, former FBI agent, she posted about 5 minutes before the hearing. So let's see if she actually posted any opinion on it. I don't see any. So, I mean, hopefully we can find, I would really wish we had some expert legal opinion, not from somebody biased, not from someone that's a PR agent of Karen Reed, and not someone that's grifting, someone that's willing to give this a legitimate both sides analysis, but that has relevant legal experience. The only one I can think of is Lawyer Lee. I don't think she's scheduled to go on tonight, so maybe tomorrow night she'll have something on this. So I don't know. So I guess that's it for the Karen Reed stuff. And I will just look quickly. See what else we've got here. Again, to me, it was important that people start analyzing the threat to our civil liberties by any of these agencies. Okay, so there are a lot of issues related. If the police are planting evidence, yes, that's an important issue. If the prosecutors are fudging evidence in any way or somehow interfering with a right to somebody to have a fair trial, yes, that's an important issue. But the idea that the feds are somehow these white angels that are above all of this stuff that swoop in and just play the part of a referee, that's crazy. That's to not understand what's been going on with the federal government and these federal agencies over the years. I'm not going to, obviously there are a lot of qualified and dedicated agents that work for these agencies. But we saw what went on with the Russiagate, that they tried to manufacture this idea that Trump was a Russian spy. Now, there are many things on a list of criticisms that I would have of Donald Trump, but he's not a Russian spy. And actually, back then, when that came out, I supported the idea of having an independent investigation into it, because it's, wow, this is when we first found out, or when they were trying to break that story, that Trump might have been a Russian spy. That'll be a terrible thing if we had somebody like that in the White House. But I'm going to say I was duped, but I never was duped in the sense that I was very suspicious of the sources on these things. And as time went by, we learned that that whole thing was manufactured by corrupt FBI agents, corrupt CIA agents, and Democratic operators, and the media that was complicit with it. And that's just a fact. I followed that case extremely closely and saw how it was played out. And that investigation, the Miller investigation, was bogus. They stacked the entire team with not only liberal Democratic prosecutors, but some of the most highly partisan ones in the world. Just to give you an example, for instance, they had the guy they called the pit bull, Andrew Weissman. But the entire team, now when these guys are doing their work, they're using government-issued phones. And all of that we're entitled to see. But multiple times, these people used this trick that deleted all the information on their phones. I'm talking about federal prosecutors. Now, Weissman is now left the government to have a tenured position on, I think, NYU Law School. And he's a regular guest on a paid guest on expert on MSNBC. But it's disgusting. He's out there deleting his messages. They all did it because there's apparently some trick where if you maybe not fully stating this, but there was a trick where if you try to reboot your phone 10 times in a row and put in a false password, it gives it a factory reboot. And so this was done multiple times. So all their messages were lost. So, I mean, that doesn't happen accidentally. This was strictly for our amusement. Now, not everybody was amused by it, but this is the zombies looking at the eclipse. I wanted to let them know yesterday that it's not a conspiracy. Because I was seeing people posting on Twitter to the point where they had to put out a warning announcement. Not free Karen Reed people, but just different people around the world believed that it was a conspiracy and that you really could look at the sun and it wouldn't hurt your eyes, that it was just people were trying to trick you. So I was worried that some of these free Karen Reed types might think that it was all a Soros-led conspiracy to trick people into thinking it was dangerous, when in reality, it was dangerous. And this was, I had the AI make this up, but the idea of the FBI under everybody's bed looking at all of our communications and information. Listen, I do fully believe that the FBI, the federal government, has a vital role to play in protecting us from terrorism and protecting us from corruption. Looks like we're having a two-man war in chat. So guys, easy. Tom, just to say, I think one of the reasons he was posting in a row is because no one else was posting in chat. So let's just say that's my fault for having too small of an audience, and more my fault than Slatherings. But Slatherings is a good guy. So Anna says total eclipses are spectacular and everyone should see one once in a lifetime with appropriate glasses. Yeah, I mean, it was really, I watched it on TV. I watched it in the yard too, but it was cool to see what it was like to get that total eclipse. Man, it would be awesome to be able to see that. And I definitely, having watched the experience of it on TV that other people felt, if, I don't think the next one happens for 40 years. So, but I plan on being there. All right. I may be just a head on a stick at that point. But if I am around 40 years from now, yeah, I'm going to go travel to where the path of totality is. And and while you're still here, Anna, since you follow Evansdale, and just curious as to if you agreed or disagreed, or what you thought of any of the stuff that Bill was adding, or any of the stuff that I've added to this. So this is still an Evansdale episode. So please add any comments or questions that you want on that case. And thank you for what you've given us already so far on it. But I've got this picture on the screen. Let me add myself back to the picture. I've got this picture on the FBI stuff. So to me, as I was saying, yes, corruption matters, whether it's the state police, the local police, the prosecutors, the DAs, or the federal government, just like they were corrupt in the Trump case. They were corrupt in the Whitey Bulger case, famously. The top federal, the top FBI employee that was handling that case is still in jail and will be in jail. It has been in jail for years. God, I can't remember. John Connolly. So, I mean, any agency, any group of human beings is prone to a certain level of corruption and dishonesty. And in the case of police, law enforcement, you have a lot of power there. So there's people that want to buy that power. There's people that want to use that power. In the case of the federal government, you have a lot of ambition. You have a lot of people that want to get ahead. So the U.S. Attorney Josh Levy left his partnership with the elite law firm, a top 20 in the world law firm, Ropes and Gray. He left that in 2020, just 4 years ago, to take this job. Actually, I think it was 2021. So he's only been on the job a few years. Why would you give up at that point in your career? He's in his, I'm not sure if he's 50 yet, but definitely in his 40s. You're going to give up this extremely high paying position as a partner in an elite law firm. You're going to give that up to take a relatively low paying position for the U.S. Attorney's Office? Well, you don't do that unless you have some ambition. Now, maybe you want to be U.S. Attorney General. Maybe you want to be the state Attorney General. That probably not, because I think that's an elective office. But the U.S. Attorney General is a cabinet level position, and you're appointed by the president. So maybe you have some ambition to do that. Or maybe you want to be appointed a judge. That's probably the more likely ambition there. But it's some ambition that was in play there. Again, that's not to suggest that, there are indications there might have been wrongdoing, but we don't know that. And this is also why sunlight is the best disinfectant. You got to get this stuff out there. And I think the Globe, what they're doing today, was a start in that process. And Judge Canone, she big time wants this. And I can tell you, Morrissey is not going to let this go. Behind the scenes, he has enough chips to play. And this, I suspect, is just an early chip. This is the first salvo in a long war. But the only really way to get the feds to truly come now, as the judge showed, she now has the power to make public stuff that the federal government doesn't think that she does, because they're saying that material is under the protective order. But she's not agreeing with that. She's saying there's no case precedent that tells me I can't make this public. So she's going to make the motions public. The motions can reference a lot of the federal material. That's most of what's in those motions. It's a motion to dismiss. And then on the prosecution side, the opposition to that motion to dismiss. And both of them were heavily involved. The federal material, 3,100 pages that they just got. So this is just the beginning of that. And I think it's fascinating to see. And we're not sure where it's going to lead. There's a lot of really maybe precedent-setting stuff going on here. So Tom and his wife are planning to go to Spain, maybe Italy or France, for 2030. So is that the next one, Tom, that's available? That's a beautiful place to go. And Tom's wife is she's an arts professor, PhD, expert in her field, and she knows especially about Renaissance art and that kind of thing. So she's been to Spain and Italy and France and all those places many times anyways, but I'm sure she could bring Tom there and be a tour guide for the chapels and museums and stuff like that. And in between, then they can go and sit outside and experience the total eclipse. That would be a beautiful place to do it. I mean, especially, man, imagine if the path of totality covers someplace like Paris. And by then, Notre Dame might be rebuilt too. So you could have a lot of interesting stuff that go on there. So I'll give it another minute or two. If anybody has any questions, I'll hang on and answer that. But if not, let's call it a night. This has been a long day. Just to update people what's coming up in the Karen Read case. So on the 12th, there's a motion. There's the last pretrial hearing to go over, not a motions hearing, but a pretrial hearing to just make sure all the ducks are in a row. I don't know if they'll be discussing that day. They have to create the questionnaire for the jurors. And this is an important part. You're trying to seat this jury to make sure there aren't people that are too heavily influenced by social media and whatever things that they've heard, or have some other reason that they may have a bias in this case. So I haven't heard anybody officially say how long the process is expected to be, the seating of the jury. I'm guessing based on other trials that it's going to be at least 3 to 5 days. So I would say maybe 3 to 5 days. So the trial officially starts next Tuesday, a week from today. But I don't think the trial begins with the opening arguments by the teams, and then the prosecution will present their case. I would not guess that we will see that for another couple of weeks. So maybe 2 weeks from yesterday. That might even be being optimistic. Hopefully you can seat that jury quick enough. And then Alan Jackson has estimated that the prosecution will take, I think it was 4 to 5 weeks to present their case, and then the defense will take 2 to 3 weeks to present theirs. So you're looking at a month and a half long case. And I don't think we'll really get to. Well, yeah, no, we should. I would definitely the opening arguments should definitely be. Oh, just getting a message. The opening arguments definitely should be before May. So probably around the last week of April, I would say. So that should be really interesting. All right, guys. Well, have a good night. I appreciate it. Thank you. And so I'm not sure when we'll be back. We'll be back soon enough. Certainly, if anything develops in the case, we'll